Hello and welcome to this edition of Dr. K's Psychobabble, a continuing of our discussion about behavior management and really getting into one of my favorite areas of behavior management, and that is functional analysis, a very, very important quality of the scientific application of behavior management principles in order to change behavior. Probably some of the most powerful tools that we have, aside from just the general idea of the ABC contingency theory. We have this notion that if we can figure out the function of a particular behavior, we're even better armed in order to deal with that behavior, whether it's a behavior that we want to create or whether it's a behavior that we want to change. So let's take a look at some graphics to support what I'm talking about here. First and foremost, from a behavior management standpoint, all behavior is goal-directed. This is a basic premise of the theory and model of behavior management. And it's important that we sort of get a buy into this. If we're going to use these tools to bring about changes in behavior, whether in ourselves or others, we have to understand that behavior is goal-directed. Now, we don't necessarily need to go into all of those sort of like hidden motivations or maybe subconscious motivations about behavior. We're really looking about overt behaviors and habits and whatnot that we can observe within the real world that exist within the contingency theory of ABC. So we have to start there. Let's take a look at our model again. We have the ABC contingency theory, and of course we know that this means antecedent, behavior, and consequences, and that we make the assumption that the behavior itself exists because the antecedents, which include goals, needs, drives, environmental factors, play upon or act upon or operate upon the behavior, along with consequences. And there's always a reinforcer if the behavior is there, even if we can't see that particular reinforcer. It's very, very important to recognize this. We may look at an environment, we may look like something's coming from nowhere, but from this perspective, if we're going to use these tools, there's an A that's presenting this opportunity for the person to make a choice in that behavior, and there's something reinforcing it. Now, getting an understanding about what is that something that is reinforcing that person's behavior has to do with understanding what is the function of this behavior. What is its purpose? Meaning, what are the A's and C's that are causing this behavior to occur? And I'll just make a note that when we're looking at behaviors that we want to add, they're not there yet. I want to work out, but I'm not working out yet. It says, well, what's the function of the behavior? What we have to look at is the reality. What am I doing instead of working out? Let's say I want to work out in the evenings. What am I doing instead? And we have to understand that I'm choosing one behavior over the other. I'm choosing to watch TV, let's say, instead of working out. So the functional analysis is to find out why I'm watching TV. And we'll see how that plays out. Even if we're looking for adding a behavior that doesn't exist, we look at the reality of what's going on. We look at what's going on right now, and we understand its consequences and antecedents. So our goal is ultimately to understand what is the function of the behavior. Now, whenever we're looking at a behavior, we'll use the situation of a classroom here. We have a behavior that's going on that we would like to see go away. You know, little Billy is telling jokes out of turn in the classroom. Okay? In order to understand why Billy is telling jokes, we make direct observations looking for the A's and C's. We want to know who's laughing, who's not, whose attention is he getting, when is it happening, who's in the room, who's he looking at, what's going on. All of these things, we make these observations, but what's the context of what's going on so we can understand the full quality of the A's and C's. In addition to that, we can actually ask the person, say, Billy, why are you selling jokes all the time? We sort of lose this one sometimes. Got this negative behavior going on. It's bugging you. You're trying to get Billy to pay attention to his math homework, but he's cutting jokes all the time. Why not sit Billy aside and say, hey, what do you want? Why are you doing this? What's going on? Give me some one-on-one time here. Tell me what it is that's going on as an investigation into the reasons why he's cracking jokes all the time. We could perform behavioral experiments. And what we can do is we can play around with the notion of different reinforcers, making changes in the environment, changing the activities, changing possibly the reactions of other people. I was actually reading a book at one time, and it was called Outrageous Behavior Management. A great book. And one of the things that it looked at was, let's say, and I'll get into this a little bit, let's say there's one of the things that's happening when we observe is there are kids in the room that are laughing. His friends are laughing at his jokes, and that's one of the reasons why he's cracking jokes. Imagine developing a behavior plan that doesn't even deal with Billy at all. You go to the other kids. You go to the other kids in the room and you say, okay, every time you don't laugh at his jokes, I'm going to mark down, and when you get 10 of those, we're going to have a pizza party, just the few of us. They will abandon Billy, and they'll just say, nope, we're not. And if somebody's doing a behavior to get a laugh from their friends and their friends don't laugh, that's almost immediate extinction. If not, there might be other functions that are going on. So you can play around with, it's experimental ways in which you can sort of modify the A's and C's to see what's going on and see if you can pinpoint the function of Billy's behavior. Finally, we can ask other people. We can ask his friends. We can ask other teachers, their parents, whatever. We're investigators trying to understand why a kid is acting out the way they are. We have a tendency to get a little emotional about this. I'm a teacher, and when I'm teaching, I like my students to be able to pay attention. I like them to pay attention. I think what I'm saying is important. I think they should feel the same way. That's not always, if not even rarely the case. But the bottom line is that I want that behavior, I want that feedback. And when somebody's not doing that, we sort of might have a tendency to take it personally. Even when our kids are acting out, we might say, I'm on the phone, or I'm trying to get this done. Why are you doing this now? Why do you hate me? Whatever. And we have to get out of that mindset and think about, what is this person trying to do? Behavior serves a function, and very often it serves a function to communicate, to have this little antenna go up in your head and you go, I wonder what's going on. Now, what we usually hear when we're dealing with this particular kind of situation is that Billy's acting for attention. We often see that, and that is certainly one of the reasons why someone will act out or act in a certain way, is to gain attention. Again, we have to be careful. We're making lots of assumptions. We're making the assumption that that's what they're actually trying to get. We're making the assumption that it's our attention they're trying to get. Could be somebody else's attention they're going to get. Or it could be, we think it's somebody else, but actually they're trying to get our attention. Maybe we have to think about the very reality that if we're going to say kids are acting out in school to get attention, why aren't they getting enough attention? That's a look in the mirror sort of question, and say, okay, maybe I don't like Billy. Maybe he's kind of a pain, and he's, kicks me off of my routine when I'm doing my teaching. It always, a little burdensome to deal with them. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's you. If my kids are acting out, maybe I'm not paying enough attention to them. I need a better balance. I might be doing that. So we always, when we're looking at the function of behavior of communicating something that's going on, why it is they're acting out, we certainly have to put ourselves into the equation and trying to figure this out. Remember, we're scientists in a way, trying to figure out why is this behavior occurring, and we have to be willing to face the mirror. And it might be because you're acting in a way that gives that individual a limited opportunity to get their needs met. Now, I said that attention is often a common reason why people will say others are acting out. There are lots of behaviors. Now, keep in mind that behaviors occur within a context. So we're taking this B and we're putting it in this classroom right here. Now, there are generally two categories of function of behavior. We'll start off with those. The first is they want to get something. The second is they want to get away from something. To gain or to get away. Important to remember these two things. Now, these categories can then be split up into all kinds of reasons why, in this case, Billy is cracking jokes. So let's take a look at some of these here. Most of them are getting something. Some of them are getting away. Let's look at this list of reasons why people may act, the functions of this joking around behavior. It could be power. Now, power is the ability for someone to control the circumstances or control resources. Okay? They want to get their hands wrapped around something. They want to be in charge. They want to be the number one person in the room. They want to be moving the conversation forward. Those kinds of things. Gaining control. I want you to think that when somebody is acting in a way to gain control, that means they have perceptions that they don't have control, and they need to act in ways in order to gain control. Secondly, we might see expression. The individual wants to express themselves. This is one, it was also in that outrageous behavior management book that I read. In this particular example, maybe, and I don't know if you've ever come across this, but I've come across this before. I've had students in my class that are actually really funny. They say very funny things. They're good at it. They like to express themselves that way. This is the way in which they communicate, the way they feel comfortable, those kinds of things. And they're saying jokes. It gets, I'm going to use the word attention, but they get the ability to express themselves and draw attention to themselves and that skill set that they have to say funny things. Attention. Attention from you, attention from their friends, attention from Sally, who they have a crush on, attention from the principal, attention from anybody. I want to dive into this one for me, for my own. I had a behavior problem when I was in school. Lots of behavior problems, and they were based around these three. When I reflect back to that time, power, expression, and attention. And one of the things that happened to me is I used to fool around a lot in class. I used to say jokes, but I was also very into answering questions and being kind of the smartest person in the room. So I would do this, and one time I just pushed it too hard, and the teacher got really angry with me, asked me to stay after, and confronted me really hard. Now, I'm not promoting this at all. He actually pushed me up against the wall and held me to the wall and confronted me and said, you're bright, you got some potential here, but you're ruining it. It just kind of really came down hard on me. And of course, I was scared, and I don't certainly advocate that kind of intervention. But what then I realized was I was trying to impress that. I was trying to impress the teacher. I was trying to get them to like me. I was trying to get them to recognize, that maybe we're more equal than normally. And this thing totally disintegrated in front of me. And it was a very, very deep revelation as to what my own motivations were. And I credit that event for a dramatic change in the way I approached school and how I was going to get the attention of people I actually admired, my teachers. So power, expression, and attention coming in. There's more. Revenge. Ooh. We don't think about this very often. We don't think about kids doing this, but certainly revenge can be one of those things. Revenge to their friends, revenge as a classmate, revenge to you for giving them that bad grade. It can just seeking a way to rebalance things. And that's a spooky one to think about. Expressions, emotions like anger and fear. Now, how would we see these in terms of someone cracking jokes? Now, if somebody's angry with something, they may resort to power. They're dealing with the anger situation, but to diffuse that anger, they're going to say a joke, gaining power over the situation, or they may say a joke that's very cutting and very demeaning to the individual. Those kinds of ones, and they're expressing anger to that individual, maybe some revenge blocked in there too. Someone could be fearful, let's say, of getting caught, called upon, realizing that they don't have the answer, so they're going to take a joke to divert that person. They may even have an ongoing standing strategy. Billy may have a strategy of cracking jokes repeatedly because in the end, it results that I'm not going to call on him to answer questions. And his fear of being ridiculed or failing causes him to act out, or gives him that option to do that. Wow, it starts to get pretty complicated, doesn't it? So you can also have individuals that are bored and they're just looking for stimulation. Now, this can happen because somebody's not paying attention and they're not prepared. They have that fear of getting called out. They're bored. I'm not even listening. I'm going to enlighten the room. But it could also be the very, very bright students who are acting out in a way because this stuff is beneath them cognitively. They're just bored. I'm already, we're going over this lesson again because there's some other people that still need some help. I'm bored. I'm going to start acting out. And finally, we look at trying to stop something or escape. Someone's picking on them, or there's something's going on that they're uncomfortable with, and the person will say something funny because they're uncomfortable with the topic. There's an individual will, let's say Billy's in class and they're starting to talk about family stuff that may be going on in Billy's life. And he wants to stop that conversation. Maybe he starts to say jokes. Maybe we've done that. Maybe we have been with friends and something comes up and we're like, okay, I want to change the topic, but I don't want to say, hey, can we not talk about this? Maybe I'll cut a joke, try and move the conversation in another direction. We start seeing that. And then, of course, if the individual looking at the opposite or of the stimulation person, let's say you have the very bright person who is bored, acting out. You have the person who's struggling, acting out to get out of the situation. I'm overwhelmed. Maybe if I act out enough, they'll send me out of the room. I'll get a timeout. Not really a timeout because I'm trying to get out of the room. I'll do a video all on timeout, what that really is. But these functions here of being able to escape a situation. Now, when we look at these, we're looking at, this is a sampling of, a pretty comprehensive sampling, but a good sampling of the reasons why we might see a person acting out. Now, the whole thing here is that the behavior they are doing works. We have to realize that. If the behavior that they're engaged in expresses power, expresses a talent, gets attention, achieves revenge, enables them to deal with emotions like anger and fear, stimulation, gets them out of these situations, the function, not dysfunction, the function of the behavior works. They have discovered that this actually works, and they're going to stick with it. They have an emotional bond with this behavior because it works. I'm going to get away from Billy for a second. We just look at all the behaviors that we engage in that we might not like. We engage in them because they actually work. So if you know someone who tends to raise their voice when they get angry, the reason why they raise their voice, the function of their raising voice, is that it works to quell opposition. It works. That's why they keep doing it. Remember, we think about these behaviors in that ABC contingency. The C means I have successfully attained power over this situation. Let's say the individual's raising their voice. Okay? So we see that these behaviors are working. Now, the reason why individuals do things that are socially inappropriate, like raising their voice, or saying jokes at untimely times, or picking on people and bullying them, or doing things to stimulate themselves, whatever. When people are doing these behaviors that are not appropriate for the situation, the diagnosis is pretty simple. Their fund of behavioral options is limited. Wherever they've come from, whatever they've done, whatever they've experienced, when they feel the need for revenge, they've only got a couple options. They don't have a big skill set. Individuals with a very large skill set on what to do when they feel like having revenge will be able to have more choices. They'll be able to go, okay, nope, not that one. I'm not going to do anything negative. I'm not going to hurt the person. I'm not going to do that. And maybe as they make their way through that list of ways to deal with this notion of revenge, they will find a more appropriate way. In fact, they might even dive down and it's not really revenge. It's a deeper emotion such as embarrassment or anger or frustration, those kinds of things. And they might find a better way to deal with that particular emotion. Let's say the idea of seeking revenge. That would be a functional approach. Now I'm using the word function in terms of how adaptive it is to the demands of our environment. So what we're looking at with Billy telling jokes is he has a tendency to engage in a maladaptive behavior that may function to meet these needs. Any one of them. So here's Billy's behavior, regardless of what need it expresses, its function. Is there an alternative behavior to meet the same function? There's something else they can do. And as teachers, can we then orient the student, orient ourselves to doing that other behavior? So let's stick with Billy. Billy, we find out when we interview and look at Billy that Billy's a really good joke teller. He likes telling jokes. He likes that part. We find out he's trying to do it all the time. So the function of that behavior is expression. The teacher could work with Billy to find ways for him to express that part of himself. Rather than just trying to get rid of the behavior altogether, there's nothing wrong with a little humor. So let's just say that the approach to this behavior is we're going to find a way to help Billy express his talent in telling jokes in a more appropriate manner. So let's say at the beginning of every class, Billy gets to stand up in front of the room and tell a really good joke. And that's how we start the day, with a Billy joke. Or maybe I give Billy, actually I'm making this up, but I give Billy a bunch of tokens, and he has 5 jokes a week that he can say. And got to run them by me, but if he wants to tell a joke at any time during the classroom, he has those 5 tokens. He can come up to the room, he can wave the token, or he can give it to me or whatever, and say, okay, and I will help him get the expression. But once those 5 are done, that's it. And basically, in the language of behavior management, you're selecting a smaller amount of the behavior under controlled circumstances in order to manage that behavior without getting into punishment, without getting into demeaning the behavior, and possibly even celebrating his talent. Now, they don't always work out that easy. I understand that. I understand that sometimes we have behaviors that are very contentious. Sometimes we have behaviors that there's no tolerance for those behaviors, and we have to find a replacement for that behavior, a complete replacement, not a different time or anything like that. If someone's hitting somebody, we have to find another way for that person to get anger out. Maybe they go to the gym or something like that, or I'm being very stereotypical there. They find some way of expressing those physical angers that they have. So what we end up with at the end of the day is here we have our ABC contingency. This is the existing situation. We have the green B, that is the maladaptive behavior that Billy is engaged in. When we intervene in a situation like this, what we do is we propose that they have a choice. Under the circumstances, A, that Billy seems to want and need to tell a joke. He now has a choice. He can simply blurt out the joke and get his normal reinforcers from that. Or he can choose to turn in one of his tokens and participate in the plan, which in fact will result in the same regular, sort of the same regular consequences, but then we add more. For Billy to make the choice for blue B instead of green B, he'll get the same consequences, but we'll add additional reinforcers. So in our plan, we might say, okay, Billy, you have 5 jokes a week. When you use up those jokes and you have not done any more than 5 jokes in a given period of time, a week, then you get this extra thing. A pizza party, time out of class, gets a free homework assignment, anything like that. So it's a little bit juicier, a little bit more rewarding for Billy to choose the behavior that's more functional, a managed expression of his humor, as opposed to just random times. These principles are generic. They're not always as easy to put into place as this simple solution that I put in. But what it reveals in the science of behavior management is the ability that we have to dig deeper than just they're doing it for attention and find out what people are really doing to try and communicate with us about their behavior and how we can then help them find more functional ways to do that. Now let's go back for a moment to my exercise plan. I'm watching TV. I should be exercising. That's my own should on myself. So I look at TV. What am I getting from TV? I'm getting relaxation time. I get to zone out. I get to, all of that stuff. Okay. Now, what if I put myself on a behavior plan that the only way I get to watch TV is after I have exercise? But that behavior that was replacing and getting in the way of my my exercise routine is the one that I'm using now as a reinforcer. I still get it, but it's contingent now on that exercise behavior. Or even, what if I change my behavior routine such that I answer my phone here when I want to exercise, I get my tablet and I use my exercise time to actually watch the television show at the same time. Again, when we're looking at behaviors that don't exist, we have to do a functional analysis of what we're doing instead. This is deep stuff when it comes to substance use disorder. When we are drinking or drugging or engaged in behavior that is out of line, there is a word that they use to describe the functions that are going on that behavior attempts to deal with. And the term is halt. Individuals will act out with their addictions when they're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. So the addiction has the function of those behaviors, and part of the way, using these same principles, part of the way that we address addictive behaviors is we try to recognize, if I'm tempted to go after my addiction, am I hungry? Lonely, tired, angry, hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Am I any one of those going on? And what's a better way to respond to those things other than the addiction? That is simply another application of the functions of behavior as applied to, say, substances or gambling addiction or sex addiction or anything that as a person becomes addicted to. So that's it for this session. I hope you've had a great learning opportunity here, and I will see you next time. Make sure you subscribe to this and hit the little bell or something like that, so you get notifications when these come out, and I will see you next time.